All right, we are on location for this episode of Dog Walk Talk. I'm Wes Blankenship. Palmer Tom's joining me. First thing we're going to hit on is our takeaways from talking to Kirby Smart and the Georgia players today. We spoke with them before practice. We're recording this before practice, and we'll have some post-practice notes here in a few minutes. But Palmer, just want to get your first initial takeaway on, hearing from Kirby, hearing from the players. What are your biggest takeaways that you take from day one of Georgia's 2022 camp?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a name that was mentioned more today than Smile Munden. And, as you mentioned, we're recording this before practice. I'm really excited to go out there and see what he looks like. Was not able to go this spring, was recovering from a surgery that he had on a torn labrum. But the players are really, complimentary of him, his athleticism, what he's able to do as an inside linebacker. Kirby said that they were really high on him last year, that he carved out a role for himself on special teams, and noted that, a lot of those inside linebacker guys, those guys that become a staple of your defense, really get their first reps on special teams. That was the case for Jamon Dumas-Johnson last year too, but I feel like we saw a little bit more of him as a true linebacker. Really excited to see what Smile brings to the table. And the players had a lot of praise for him too. Kirby was very complimentary, but the players, Darnell Washington, who's a tight end that goes up against him, out in space and blocking. Warren McClendon, who's an offensive lineman that sees him from the opposite side of the field. Chris Smith that plays behind him. All three of them had a lot to say about Smile as a linebacker and really, kind of circling him as a breakout player. So, going to pat myself on the back there a little bit that we pointed him out as a breakout player. And, again, really excited to see what he can bring to the table for this team.
Yeah, having that player, verification really means a lot. I remember Roquan Smith was one of those guys that started off on special teams, same position. And, I was working in Macon at the time, and he played at Macon County. So everyone was excited when Roquan, as a freshman, got on, the punt team or the kickoff team or whatever, and you see what that can become, from the linebacker position. For me, I didn't think it was a small update when Kirby mentioned that Taiki Smith may not be 100% yet. He's cleared to practice, but not cleared for full contact yet. So kind of semantics there from Smart. What did you make of that?
Yeah, it certainly seems like an ACL injury that's taken a little bit more time. Again, really interested to see what his involvement is like out at practice today. Kirby talked about some of those safeties that are going to be competing for playing time beside Chris Smith. Said that they weren't concerned about finding just the guy that was going to play next to him that was going to start, but they want to find 5 guys that they feel comfortable with, A, so they can rotate guys, and B, in case they need to go from a depth standpoint down the depth chart. And so, Taiki was one of those guys that he mentioned. This certainly, like I said, seems like an ACL that's taking a little bit longer. I think, all of us remember, the most recent ACL injury that Georgia dealt with was George Pickens, and he made an incredibly quick recovery. That's not normal, guys. And more often than not, this is something that takes, double-digit months to recover from. He's 10 months removed from it now, or coming up on that mark, mid-August. And, I guess he's going to be working his way back. I think, to me, and I've projected this kind of all along, I think Dan Jackson is probably going to be Georgia's starting safety next to Chris Smith, at least in the opener, until Taiki can get on the field and prove that he's capable of playing at a high level that Georgia needs at safety. So, again, really curious to see what he brings to the table, and, curious to see what that competition is like in the secondary, both at safety and at corner.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, Georgia fans are kind of clamoring, wondering why the Dogs haven't taken anyone out of the transfer portal. Taiki was one of those guys. JT Daniels is one of those guys. And I'm not saying that Georgia's not taking players because they're all injured, but, I mean, let's take a look back and see, the guys that Georgia's taken out of the transfer portal, they haven't made a huge impact, and Georgia's working with the guys that they got and the guys they recruited.
Eric Gilbert, too. Another guy that they brought in from the transfer portal that didn't make any impact really last season. So, and along those lines, Georgia didn't take anybody from the transfer portal, but they're essentially getting two new players from the transfer portal in Taiki Smith and Eric Gilbert, because you expect those guys to make a contribution in year 2 with the program, even though they didn't make a contribution in year 1.
It's easy to forget about Darnell Washington struggling with his injuries. He started last season with a foot injury, like Taiki Smith did. But there's a lot of buzz today from the players we spoke with about Darnell being 100%, and the tight ends in general. Everyone's excited about that group. But what did you learn or hear from Darnell today, as we got a chance to actually speak with the 6'8" Georgia Bulldogs tight end?
Besides looking up at him, the thing that stood out to me was what Kirby had to say about Darnell. Said that before his foot injury that he had this spring, you mentioned the foot injury that he had to start last season, also had one that started before spring practice and wasn't able to go. But before that Kirby said Darnell was in some of the best shape that he's seen him in. Probably the best shape that he's seen him in at Georgia. And so, to me, I think that is an incredible sign. Darnell said that he's feeling close to, where he was before this most recent foot injury, and that he's, incredibly excited about this tight end room. Certainly there's been a lot of talk about these tight ends. We haven't heard a lot of talk from these tight ends. We haven't talked to Brock Bowers. We haven't talked to Eric Gilbert. We talked to Darnell Washington this spring, but again, he was banged up and wasn't able to play. And we didn't talk to him last season. So, to me, the thing that stood out from Darnell was that he said, was asked to describe this Georgia tight end room and just, put it simply, mismatch. This group is a mismatch, and it starts with those big three, Brock Bowers, Eric Gilbert, Darnell Washington. They all bring something a little bit different to the table. Bowers, a little bit of your more speed guy. Washington, your big blocker. And Gilbert somewhere in the middle, bringing a little bit of both roles. This tight end group is certainly special. Going to be exciting to watch them, and certainly excited to see what the group can do with everyone healthy.
Of course, every play starts with Stetson Bennett, and he shaved his head, and seems like he and some tight ends and a lot of people on offense are now a part of something called the Buzz Cut Boys. So that's the big story today. That's what everyone wanted to talk about.
I guess we didn't get the memo, Wes.
No, no Buzz Cut Boys.
No Buzz Cut Boys for DawgsHQ. But yeah, I think that Kirby was asked about it and has been using, the phrase locked in and locked up.
Locked out.
Locked out.
Yeah, I think it's not like a MLB, like a lockout. Like everyone's still reported for camp, but he was talking about locking into camp and locking out.
The outside world.
The outside, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the exact quote there, but let's see.
Well, I mean, someone said on our message board.
Lock in and lock out.
Yeah, Kirby's got new phrases every year, and this is just a new phrase.
Yeah, and as it related to Stetson and the Buzz Cut Boys, he said that was kind of their way to do it, to remove themselves from the outside world. This is an incredibly special time. You don't get to do this, in season. This time that they've got before they start school, I think they start school in 2 weeks. Weird that I don't know that now. Not being different being around Athens as a graduate as opposed to in school here, but believe the Bulldogs start classes here in just about 2 weeks. Over these next 2 weeks, they do have time to completely lock in on football. There's no sort of hours restrictions. They are together as a team. They are in a hotel together as a team. They are away from the distractions of the outside world, and they have that opportunity to lock in, into football, lock out the outside world. And the Buzz Cut Boys were doing that with their haircuts.
All right, so we are about to head down to practice and get to watch a few minutes of it. Palmer, what are you looking forward to the most on the field?
Yeah, I think I wrote about it the other day, earlier this week. Some of those big position battles. Certainly interested to see, the safeties, who's lining up next to Chris Smith, the corner opposite of Keely Ringo. What does corner 2, what does corner 3 look like? We know what Georgia has in Chris Smith and Keely Ringo. What about the pieces around them in the secondary? So that's certainly one thing. And then on the offensive side of the football, offensive guards, that offensive line, Georgia has an incredibly talented group of guys. They're trying to find their best 5 and find that combination. The 2 interior spots at guard certainly seem like a spot that are up for grabs, and that's something that I'll be watching, and I'm sure that we'll be reporting on post-practice.
I'm going to watch the punters, see what Brett Thorson's up to.